This is part 2 of the Hugo nominees reading vlog. I will link part 1 on the screen if you haven't watched it. I am reading through all of the novella and the novel nominees for 2022. And if you didn't watch part 1, I did get COVID. I hadn't caught it before, and so I'm still pretty mad about it. It's kind of given me some time to read. I've actually been playing a lot of Breath of the Wild. But I have also been reading a lot. So I finished up She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan, which I started in the last vlog. This is a genderqueer retelling of the Ming Dynasty, the start of the Ming Dynasty and that emperor, which is a historical period that I don't really know a ton about. And this is a, I would say like medium-paced book. Like there's parts of it that are kind of slow. Not only does it follow our main character of Zhu, who is a woman that took on the identity of her brother in order to kind of like grasp his fate, which is supposed to be fated to be like fantastic, great, and like the rise to power there, but it also follows the eunuch general that's part of the Mongolian army and like his vengeance and his fate. It's a lot of stuff about like fate and revenge and how people are sort of connected and how they propel along fates, like how all those fates are intertwined. And all of that. So it's a big, like, I would say like a political intrigue sort of story with like a war story. This definitely reminded me a lot, although less fantasy-ish, of like the Poppy War in like the different moving about of, you know, military strategy and people that are awful to the main characters and things like that. Definitely that. This is also very queer. And I would say this is less brutal in the like grim darkness of it. There's still some definitely brutal things that happen, but less brutal than the Poppy War. So yeah, I liked this. It'll be an interesting conclusion to the duology when the next book comes out, which has not been officially announced yet. I'm thinking like a 4-star. It was a book that when I wasn't reading it, I wasn't necessarily like, oh my god, I have to pick it up, because it is more slower moving. But I really liked, again, all those like character interactions and how fates are intertwined and things. That was really cool. I don't tend to love military fantasy or sci-fi or anything like that, so some of that strategery was like, I don't really care about this, but solid. And yeah, I will continue with this series when the next book comes out. Actually gonna read one of the novellas next, Across the Green Grass Fields by Shauna Maguire, just to read that really quickly. Then I have to read a book for book club that's not on the Hugos, and then I think I will probably either read Master of Jin or the last Wayfarer's book. I'm thinking one of those two might be my favorite as I'm going through some of these. This one I thought might have been a 5-star, but ended up being a 4. The Wayfarer's books are always 5-star books for me, and then I did read the short story, one of the short stories, A Dead Jinn in Cairo, which is in the same world as Master of Jin, and I really liked that. So I'm thinking I might really like Master of Jin. I don't know if I'm gonna get to the sci-fi series. Why could I not think of what it is? Memory Cult Empire, Arcady Martin. The second book, Desolation Called Peace. I don't know if I'm gonna get through all of those enough to read that, but we will see. So yeah, right now I'm thinking top contenders for my picks are gonna be the Wayfarer book or the Master of Jin. But who knows? Anyway, I'm gonna be reading Across the Green Grass Fields next. Hello, I am still so fatigued, so I didn't do anything today with myself. I put non-pajamas on, and even that was a stretch, and I put my hair up like this, and no makeup, and you're just gonna have to deal with that. So I did finish Across the Green Grass Fields last night, so I started and finished that in like 2 days, obviously, novella. This was fine. Again, not the strongest contender in the Wayward Children series. I tend to prefer the ones that include the full cast, unless we're going to a world I really love. And the Hooflands, which is where this one takes place, is just basically like a world for horse girls. Or really, it's anything hooved, like, is there. So any kind of like hooved monster, creature, myth, whatever. So there's like centaurs, kelpies, unicorns, a bunch of other different things, which is kind of cool. But I felt like this one suffered from the same thing that a few of the other ones have suffered from, where like it doesn't necessarily follow through completely on the theming. There was a lot of like choosing your own destiny and not letting destiny choose you, and no one right way to do things, and not assuming things about people great. And then it abruptly ends, as it always does, with like the kids, you know, going back to the like previous world. It happens in every book. That's not a spoiler. We know that's coming. But I wish there was like a little bit more Needed a little bit more time. There's sort of two parts of the story, and I wish like the second part had a little bit more time. But I'm assuming that we'll see Reagan as part of the other like bigger cast as the series goes on. There's been a wrap-ups with some of the other cast members, and then she might be added in as another student. We will see. So we might get more of a wrap-up with that. But fine, 3.75 stars. So not my least favorite of the series, but definitely not my favorite. Again, I prefer like the main installments for that. I now just started at Master of Jinn, so I will be updating on that. That's one of the last books. I have 3 more after this. No, I have 3 novels after this one. So I think I'll make it. 2 of those are the Arcady Martine books. I actually need to go to the bookstore and pick the first book up for that. And then 1 more novella. I did start The Past is Red by Catherine M. Valente. I listened to it on audio, or I'm listening to it on audio. The thing is like, I kind of know I'm probably not gonna like it that much. Her books just don't tend to resonate with me. I'm still giving it a shot, and the audiobook is kind of fun, but it's in like the voice that the narrator is using for the like accent is a little bit hard to like focus on if I'm not only focusing on that. So I've been trying to listen to that while I'm like playing a video game, for example, which I can usually do for a lot of books. And this, I feel like I need to pay a little bit closer attention because there's more like sort of slang and like the accent that's being used and whatever. So I don't know how fast I'm gonna get through that one, but honestly, if I don't get through that one, I probably will. It's a novella. But if I don't, it's not that big of a deal because I'm like, I'm not gonna rank it a 5. Like, I would be stunned. I just don't tend to resonate with her books. Like, my favorite book of hers is Deathless, and when I read that, I still gave it like 3.5 stars, 3 stars. It resonates more with me, individual lines over time. Like, I like it more in my memory, but the actual enjoyment of the reading experience was pretty low. So this would probably be the same. I don't think it's going to knock out the top 2 contenders for novella for me. But I am looking forward to Master of Jinn. I really liked the short story that I read before this, to just kind of see how I liked the writing style and to like dip my toe in, and people said you should read that short story before you read this. So I liked that short story, and I'm so far, like, I'm only 10 pages into it, but I like the writing. Steampunk Cairo. So fun. So it's a contender. I just finished a Master of Jinn, and I don't think that I've updated while reading this because I've been so engrossed in it and enjoyed it so much. So this was another, I don't know if unexpected is the right word. Again, I went into this not knowing a ton about it. It's like a steampunk Cairo, and that's it. So I did read the short story, The Dead Jinn in Cairo before this. I did not read Haunted Tramcar or whatever. But you don't really need that to read this. This was so good. Atmosphere, 10 out of 10. Characters, probably 10 out of 10. The mystery plot, I don't always love a mystery. This one was done really well. Yeah, I already have been, even before I finished this, last night, I was looking up, like, do we have an announced second novel in this series yet? And there's not. Hopefully soon, because I'm like, more please. Again, there's like Sapphic, cool like Sapphic relationship. There's a lot, and I loved this. This was like, man, what was the overlap here? This had some vibes of like City of Brass. You know, there's similar things going on there, like similar mythologies being used. This is obviously more modern with that like steampunk vibe. It also is really self-aware with its like mystery, with some of the ridiculousness, and then it has moments that are like funny, but like just funny enough. I would say there was a moment, particularly later in the book, that almost reminded me of like the humor of like Thor Ragnarok, which I was not expecting. Great, but like not too much, right? Just enough. So this one, I think, 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 stars. This one is a contender for favorite of the novels. So I do have it on my shelf, that's why I'm like hunching over, sorry. Just trying to change up locations for the vlog. So I have 3 more books left. One of those being The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. Then I need to read a memory called Empire before I can read Desolation called Peace. I did some math, and I have to read about 100 pages a day of all the books I have to read. Because I also need to read First Sister, which is not for the Hugos, but that's for my book club. I actually have to read that next. I'm taking a little breaky break. I'm trying to figure out, I was like, could I listen to one of these books on audio? I don't think I want to. I could maybe do The Galaxy and the Ground Within on audio, but I don't think I want to. And then I tried to listen to a sample of a memory called Empire. I don't and I don't think I'm gonna vibe with it. So I think I need to read these all in physical copy. I'm gonna be cutting it so close. But I think if I'm still reading The Desolation Called Peace, I keep like forgetting which ones are actually nominated. I will know at least by halfway through if that is a contender for the one I want to vote for, because at this point, I'm probably going to be voting for A Master of Jinn, but potentially Galaxy in the Ground Within, but I'll be reading that next. The A Mirror Called Empire, Arcadia Martine books are the last things I'm going to read. So unless those knock one of these two out of the running, I should know in time for voting. We will see. I still want to get all of them right before voting. Wish me luck. I had to take a little break to read First Sister because we're reading that for book club this month, but now I'm back to Hugo's. So I was actually going to read the Becky Chambers book next, but I decided I didn't want to have to read the Arcadia Martine books back to back, even if I love them. I like to typically take a break between like books in the same series. I used to be a binger, not so much anymore, but I'm a little less than halfway through the first book, so A Memory Called Empire. I want to talk about this like slightly because I'll be interested to kind of compare how I feel about the second book if I do get to the second book. I mean, I plan on reading it, but if I really didn't like this, I wouldn't. This is interesting because I went into this really not knowing much about it. I knew like Ambassador goes to an empire that is essentially a little bit, you know, empirical, colonizing, things like that. And her predecessor was like potentially murdered and everything goes from there. But this is written in a way that's like slightly harder to follow sometimes. I'm comparing this a little bit, not quite as complicated, but this feels similar in like the way my brain has to think about it to Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer, which is another sci-fi, not like this, but just like the way that it's written is like slightly literary. Like there's, I think you just ran into my new shelf. I don't know if you can see back there. I just put like a single shelf together. I'm gonna try to figure out how to arrange everything. But yeah, like the way that like language is used, and there's even like discussions of how language is used within this book, and there's like just like discussions of cultures and things, and it feels very like foreign, and it's just very interesting because, like I said, she's an ambassador. She's from like a space station, and then she's going to like a planet, and they kind of consider her barbaric, like her people, sort of like barbaric, like they joke that they're barbarians. But like they blatantly are not anything that we would perceive as barbaric, obviously. Like they have like really advanced technology and things like that, so it's kind of just like, what? So yeah, it can be like sometimes hard to follow, but not in like a bad way. Like I'm pretty, you know, chugging along with it. I'm trying to read about 100 pages a day. I figured out, this is a tangent, but I figured out that usually I'm very much like a mood reader. I can set up a monthly TBR and like kind of stick to it, like something for a project like this, for example, but I basically did the math between like these 3 books that I have to read of how many pages I have to read a day to finish before the 11th so that I can vote. And I have to read basically like about 100 pages a day, give or take. And I can so do that if I have like a short-term goal like that. Could I read 100 pages a day every day? Potentially, but I'd probably get a little bit burnout. You know, I'm not doing other hobbies as much because I'm just doing this for this project. But I've done that before, where like I've done the math, and then I can just like hyper focus on this thing because I have this like goal to attain. It's very funny. But anyway, I'm liking this so far. This was the winner of the 2020 Hugo. I'm curious if I'll think this book and like the second book, for example, are good enough. Like if the second book, the sequel, is good enough to be voted like a, you know, 2 year in a row best novel situation. Doesn't happen very often. I think the first one to do it was actually the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. So will this do that? I don't know. Doesn't happen, like I said, very often at all. I will probably update next though when I like actually start the Becky Chambers book and then the sequel to this. I totally forgot to update that I read The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. I read this in 2 days. 2 sittings, really. Half and half. Am I shocked? No, because all of these books in this series have been 5 stars, and this one was as well. This is the final book in the series, and it was only following aliens, which I thought was great. A great way to sort of wrap up the series. I love the themes in here, as I do in every single one of these installments, of coming to terms with like differences, and just like, instead of it just being the humans being like, oh, aliens, this is all so weird, it was even like aliens having to discuss their like cultural differences. Two characters in particular were my favorite, Roveg and Speaker. Oh my god, I'm obsessed with them. I love them. I teared up. It's such a hopeful world that like I wish existed. The way, this one like has a lot of themes of parenthood, and the way that some of the different aliens like raise kids, I was like, I want, like literally I don't actually know how to say it, Aulion? Because I always read the word and I never have to say it out loud. The way that they do parenting, obsessed. Honestly, the way that most of the aliens do parenting in this like series, but like they have people that like, they treat it as a profession. They're like, you become a parent because you want to be, just the themes around that are amazing. I will talk about this more when I do like an actual review of this, but I love this. 5 out of 5 stars. Now I really don't know, because I'm pretty sure it's gonna be between this and Master of Jinn. I love them both. I think this will be the one that I vote for. I'm very torn. But like, the feel-good thematics of this are just so good. It also just feels nice that it's like the last book in the series, which I am like, it's so bittersweet because I think it's ending on a high note. It's nice that it's not being like dragged out until they just get like bad or run out of stuff to talk about. Not that you really would with a book series like this, but whatever. I'm glad that she's ending it at like 4 books. But I would gladly take so many more. I love how like bittersweet these endings sort of are, because not everything's wrapped up in a pretty little bow, and it feels very much like life, but it still feels like hopeful. It's just so good. So I just loved this. I do not think, I'm currently reading A Desolation Called Peace. I just started, I'm like 50 pages in. I don't think that is gonna knock out a Master of Jinn or this one. So I'm like, even if I don't get that finished before the 11th, which right now it's like the 5th, so I should have plenty of time. I'm pretty confident that like, I'm not going to love that enough to knock one of these two out. So one of those two is definitely gonna be my pick for the novel category. Hello, I have officially finished up my reading for the Hugos, technically. So I did start A Desolation Called Peace by Arcady Martine. Originally I started on ebook because I wasn't sure if I wanted to get a physical copy. I have a physical copy of the first book, but I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it enough to justify getting a copy of the second book, and I'm glad that I didn't. I got it from my library on an ebook first. And the thing with this book is that it adds like 3 new POVs, and I think it actually could have just added 1 new POV. I mean, I haven't gotten to the end, I'm like 66% of the way into it. But I could just tell from the get-go I wasn't going to enjoy it enough for it to knock the top 2 contenders out of the spot for the voting in the Hugos. I wasn't even really sure I wanted to keep reading it. I was contemplating DNFing it, but then when I start to read it again, I'm interested enough to continue, and I kind of just want to continue because like, why not? So I ended up getting the audio and just been listening to it during walks and stuff. So that's where I got about 66% of the way through. But at this point, I think I'm not gonna like it as much as the first book, and I didn't like love the first book. It's fine. I just think, especially the second book, I'm actually kind of surprised it was nominated. I get what it's doing, but I think it would have been a much more interesting story for me if they would have focused the POVs a little bit more and not had all of those extras, because the first book had 1 POV. And then there were things about that 1 POV that I wanted to see explored more, and we're missing that because we have all these POVs we're sharing with. So I'll be finishing that before the end of the month, and I will have my full reaction and like my regular reading wrap up. But as far as the Hugo reading, I am now done with all of the Hugos. I made it, and I voted like a few days before voting stopped. So I'll actually be doing a video ranking all of the Hugo nominees, telling you guys where I kind of placed everything and how I voted, and what my predictions are for what's actually gonna win the Hugos. So I'll post that later this month. So yeah, that was a really fun little reading experiment. I think I will continue to do this, honestly. I am very intrigued now to see what next year's nominees will be, which is a ways away, obviously. But I'm kind of like, okay, what are the things that are likely to be nominated for Hugos? Because then I'll have them on my radar even more. It's gonna be interesting to see like what of this year's new releases have all the hype and stuff. So we will see. I mean, we're already more than halfway through the year, and I don't know which are the ones that are like top contenders. So we will see. But this was a very fun project. I enjoyed everything I read to a certain extent. None of them were less than like 3.5 stars. I think. Maybe some of the novellas were 3, but a 3-star novella does not bother me whatsoever. So this was overall a really good experience, and I will plan to do this with more awards in the future as well. So comment down below and let me know if you read the Hugo nominees, and if there's any awards in particular you think I should do this for. Science fiction and fantasy ones. I'm not reading like the Man Bookers or anything. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all you guys soon. Bye.